Everyone has a past.
Well, we certainly know about Belle's.
Not so much Tom's.
We can only go on what we're presented in court.
Right, but if we keep getting hung up on events long past, we're doing exactly what Tom's defence wants.
So what do you suggest?
I suggest we go back to their actual relationship.
I don't know about anyone else, but I'm having a hard time trying to get it all straight.
What about we work out a clear order of events, starting with the increasing incidence of physical violence?
Alleged incident.
We were trying for a baby. At least that's what I thought, until I found out that she was still taking the pill. To say I was upset would be an understatement. Trust is everything in a relationship. But to claim I held her hand under a scalding hot tap... I'm sorry, no.
He knew the tap was hot. I told him to stop that, it was burning me.
The moment I heard her scream, I reached across to turn off the tap, but it was already too late. Clearly, neither of us had realized just how hot the water was.
And he made out like it was all my fault. Like he hadn't deliberately just scalded my hand, but he had.
Anyway, afterwards I turned the boiler thermostat down to make sure it didn't happen again.
The dog was Tom's idea. I didn't even want a dog. Not at first. He set up a camera in the house to keep an eye on Piper whilst we were out. But he was also using it to listen into my conversations when he wasn't there. And when I found out, I told him that he needed to get help. And he got so angry. He punched me in the stomach.
I did not hit her. Simple as that. Just a lot of shouting, mainly from Belle.
The 23rd of May this year. I believe that day marked 5 years since your mother's passing. Must have stirred up some difficult emotions.
I had a performance review with my bosses that day.
He was really stressed about it. Hormonal twerps. That's what he called them.
We all vent our stress in different ways.
There was a parcel he wanted me to wait in for. Anyway, I missed it and he was furious.
But this day stands out for one reason in particular. Unlike each of your allegations against the defendant, there were, in fact, witnesses present when you physically attacked Mr. King.
I was just so upset. The things he'd said about my mum, it was so cruel.
It was in the heat of the moment, but that's no excuse. The parcel I'd asked Belle to wait in for was meant to be a surprise, and what I knew was going to be a very difficult day. Anyway, that's when I realized I needed to just walk away.
But rather than letting him go, you instead ran after the defendant and shoved him to the ground, as Mr. King's employers and members of your own family witnessed. Your emotions took over, and it resulted in you losing control. And not for the first time. Isn't that right?
All I wanted was for us to be able to put it behind us. But it was pretty clear that we couldn't do that on our own. So I arranged some counseling for Belle. And that's when she told me that she'd already got in contact with her mental health crisis team.
But hang on, not a single one of Belle's allegations can be backed up by any other witnesses.
He said, she said.
Exactly. The only incident that can be corroborated by anyone else is when Belle, true to form, loses her temper and shoves Tom, which is exactly what happened to Gemma Andrews.
Shouldn't you be more balanced, Mr. Foreman?
Facts are facts. The rest is just hearsay.
Are you married, Carl?
Sorry, what's that got to do with anything?
No, nothing. I just noticed your wedding ring, that's all, and just wondered if you applied the same blunt reasoning to your own relationship.
Well, we've been together for 22 years. I think we do all right.
Can't speak for your wife, though, can you?
I wouldn't dream of it. But so far, she's not stuck an axe in my back, so there's that.
After the relationship had ended, Must have been a relief when Tom finally seemed to have left the village.
Not exactly, no. Because he was with Amelia at this point. So I was worried who was going to do to her what he did to me.
So, when Miss Spencer wished to talk in private...
I thought she'd finally seen through his act. But instead of Amelia turning up, it was Tom. And he locked the door behind him and took the key.
I just wanted to talk. As difficult as it was, I was trying to move on with my life, and clearly Belle couldn't do the same.
He then attacked me. Physically. And then made a coffee. Like it was nothing. And that's when I grabbed the shotgun.
Suddenly she's pointing it right at me.
I wasn't gonna shoot him. I just wanted him to give me the key so I could get out of there.
She got herself into such a state. I don't even think she knew what she was doing.
I just ran. I knew he was coming for me.
I couldn't exactly leave her like that. She still had the shotgun. Who knows what could have happened?
I hid in my brother's flat. And I blocked the door with a chair, but he had an axe. And he just smashed his way through.
I am sorry, but there was no axe. I just pushed the door open, and there she was, pointing the shotgun at me again. Only this time, she pulls the trigger.
He had an axe.
Luckily for me, the safety was still on. I managed to get the gun from her before anyone got hurt, or so I thought.
He wasn't even angry anymore. It was worse than that. He was getting off on how scared I was. If I hadn't... You weren't there. You didn't see what he was like.
I turned to leave. And then suddenly there was this axe in my back.
I don't even remember picking it up. He was going to kill me. I was sure of it.
So, facts, those frequently inconvenient but generally accurate indicators of where the truth might actually lie. Yeah, by this point, Belle and Tom are no longer together.
And Tom had already found somebody else.
Yeah, we'll get to Tom and Amelia in a bit.
Okay, back to the facts.
We know Belle had already been to the police by this point.
Claire's Law.
Yeah, which had turned up precisely nothing.
True.
And even though they were no longer together, we also know that, by her own admission, Belle was going back to the police with further allegations against Tom, such as there were. Alternatively, he was trying to stop his ex destroying his life with several unfounded allegations. And also, I'm sorry, but we cannot ignore her mental health issues in all of this.
Well, Tom certainly didn't. Controlling her medication, making her believe that she was the problem, not him. Just another way of maintaining his hold over her.
It had been a while since the community mental health team had heard from Belle, if I'm honest.
On the basis of that meeting, you made the decision to admit Mrs. King to a crisis assessment unit.
Belle and I made that decision together.
And Mr. King, was he supportive?
No. Far from it, in fact. He claimed the only problem was that Belle had stopped taking her medication, but they'd fixed that now.
How long was Mrs. King at the centre?
Not long. Belle discharged herself soon. Too soon, in my opinion.
What happened next?
I went to visit her at home. She was very on edge about the possibility of me running into her husband. When I suggested meeting somewhere else, somewhere he wouldn't see us, she refused. She told me he was tracking her phone.
And how did Mrs. King seem when she told you this? Angry? Resentful?
Anything but. In my opinion, she was frightened. Broken, even.
Did Mrs. King ever tell you, outright, that she was being abused by her husband?
She didn't have to.
Why was that?
Because in my opinion, it was clear she was being controlled by him. And I know for a fact her cousin Charity shared my concerns.
But Mrs. King never explicitly communicated to you or your team that her husband was being abusive towards her. A simple yes or no will suffice.
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
So, Rachel seemed to have some serious concerns about the nature of Belle and Tom's relationship.
Well, she'd only met the man once, and she herself admitted that Belle never even suggested that he'd ever been abusive towards her.
Yes, but it was clearly as much about what she was picking up from Belle, not to mention what Belle's cousin told her.
But if Tom's the abuser that Belle claims he is, why didn't she just talk to somebody? It's not like she didn't have an opportunity.
Where do you want me to start, eh? Because she felt trapped, because she was terrified about what he might do?
Because, in spite of everything, she still loved him. Is that what you're saying?
Or because deep down she knew she'd made it all up, that none of it was real. OK, I think it's time that we had another show of hands. Let's start with guilty. Right, that's 4 this time. And not guilty? OK, that's 2 to 1 in favour of the defendant. Looks like we're finally getting somewhere.